The live-action remake of Snow White is officially out, and I just got home from watching it. Let me tell you, if you've ever trusted a glowing first reaction from anyone in the media, do yourself a favor. Take note of the names of those who hyped this movie up and make sure you never take their opinions seriously again. Anyone claiming this is the best live-action remake in years is absolutely full of it. Look, we've been talking about this disaster for a long time, but I still had to sit through it. And trust me, I was hoping it would at least be better than expected. Instead, I spent nearly 2 hours wanting to crawl out of my own skin in the middle of the theater. It's hard to even rate this film because there are so few redeeming qualities, unless you count the fact that the credits eventually rolled and I got to go home. Honestly, Disney should have Batgirl'd this movie. And if they weren't going to shelve it entirely, they should have at least saved themselves the embarrassment of a theatrical release and dumped it straight onto streaming, just like every other forgettable, soulless remake they've churned out. I'm giving the live-action Snow White remake a measly 2 out of 10. And trust me, we're going to get into why. If you're worried about spoilers, this is your warning, because I don't care. Let's start with the plot. First and foremost, it's excessively long and needlessly convoluted. Just a reminder, the 1937 original is a tight 83 minutes. It's a simple story. A love story. Good versus evil, charming and timeless. That's it. But if you're the kind of person who watches that classic and thinks, you know what would make this better? If it was twice as convoluted, half as charming, and dragged out by an extra 30 minutes, then congrats, this is the Snow White for you. This movie drags. It's stuffed with extra musical numbers that do nothing but bloat the runtime. And let me tell you right now, they're atrocious. And listen, I'm not someone who hates musicals. I love Disney movies. Hercules, The Princess and the Frog, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. I know all the songs. I'm not some anti-Disney purist. But this is where I draw the line. I've never been a big fan of musicals, but honestly, throughout this movie, I found myself waiting on a wish, which, coincidentally, is the title of one of the new songs. Except my wish was that the ceiling of the theater would cave in, like that infamous Captain America 4 screening, so I could get my money back and leave early. Oh, and let's talk about the music. It's auto-tuned to oblivion. If I have one nice thing to say about Rachel Zegler, it's that she can sing. Her vocals are the only ones in the movie that don't sound like they were run through a T-Pain filter. You'd think Disney would have learned their lesson after the auto-tune disaster that was Emma Watson in Beauty and the Beast. But nope, they did it again. And my favorite part? Gal Gadot. Oh, we'll talk more about her in a minute, but wow! She has her own songs, and the transition between her auto-tuned voice and the actual singer they brought in for the harder notes is painfully obvious. Like, you hear the moment, it switches. Speaking of which, now's a great time to talk about performances. Rachel Zegler does what Rachel Zegler does. Her vocals are undeniably great. If you're someone who hasn't been following the controversy surrounding her, and let's be real, most casual moviegoers haven't, she delivers an okay performance with what she's given. But for me, I've seen too much of her outside of this role, and it's hard to separate that. She comes off as condescending, though I'd argue that's less about her acting and more about how downright awful the script is. And trust me, we'll get into that mess soon. As for the rest of the cast, completely forgettable. Andrew Burnap plays the guy in the movie because he's not a prince, and since Rachel Zegler herself called him the guy in the movie, let's just roll with that. The film expects us to assume it's a love story just because, well, they cast a guy in it. Honestly, you could cut every single one of his scenes and it wouldn't make a difference. His character's actual name is Jonathan, but Jonathan, the guy in the movie, is utterly unremarkable, probably because the script reduces him to yet another bumbling man who has to learn the error of his ways thanks to Snow White's brilliance. Let's talk about this train wreck. You know how people say knock on wood for good luck? Well, for this movie, you could just knock on Gal Gadot. Because wow, that performance was wooden. Seriously, what horrible casting. I have genuinely seen better performances from overly dramatic middle school theater kids. She's neither intimidating nor intense, and her big musical number, it felt like something straight out of a karaoke bar on a Friday night, complete with sticky floors and off-key singing. Somehow she manages to be both wooden and over the top at the same time. Every expression she gives is so stale and cheesy that I almost mistook her for the nachos I grabbed at the concession stand. And don't even get me started on the visuals, because, wow, are they atrocious. Okay, I'll give some credit where it's due. The animated animals? Adorable, but they clash so hard with the rest of the film. Everything else is so washed out and dull that these bright little critters feel completely out of place. They're designed to resemble the animals from the original Snow White, which is nice, but when everything around them is so desaturated, it just doesn't work. Now, the one scene I actually liked was in the mines when they sing their song. The colors? Surprisingly cool. Some neat lighting choices there. But that's about it. Otherwise, the whole movie suffers from this bizarre attempt at creating two different looks. The kingdom is drenched in blue tones, making everything look washed out, while the forest is supposed to feel warm and inviting. But instead, it looks like someone slapped a urine filter over the entire thing. Everything has this weird yellow tint for no reason. It's that new Hollywood problem where everything is backlit, too warm, yet simultaneously desaturated. And honestly, it makes no sense. Cartoons are a great medium for storytelling because they allow for bright, bold colors, expressive characters, and fun visuals. I can't imagine a single child, the actual target audience, watching this and thinking, you know what? This is too colorful and fun. Can I get something more dull and lifeless? Now let's talk about another disaster. Rachel Zegler's hair and makeup. I don't know who was responsible for styling her in this film, but whatever they did, it was a crime against humanity. That haircut, straight up Lord Farquaad vibes the entire movie. I cannot unsee it. Look, Rachel Zegler is not an unattractive person, but this haircut does her no favors. If they had even pretended to care about the source material, they could have given her a similar style that was flattering. But instead, we got this. And the makeup? Yikes. I get that they were going for a natural beauty look. But come on, it didn't do her any favors, and it definitely didn't give off Disney princess vibes. Then there's the dress. Oh boy, not only is it historically inaccurate, but it also looks cheap, like something you'd find in a last-minute Halloween costume bin. Wear it once, regret it, and never touch it again. It just looks itchy. Meanwhile, the evil queen? Flawless. Her makeup? On point. Her wardrobe? Stunning. The contrast in quality between her and Snow White's design is actually hilarious. But even with the queen, they still managed to fumble one of her most iconic moments. Her transformation into the old hag. It wasn't scary, it wasn't convincing, and it fell right into that weird, uncanny valley territory. Honestly, at least this movie is consistent. Consistently disappointing. Alright, let's get into the dwarf situation. Because holy hell, what an absolute horror show. These things? Eldritch nightmares. They're disproportionate, they're disturbing, and they are so far from charming that I genuinely question who approved this. The vocal performances? Fine, I guess. But the designs? Mother of God. Hours later, I'm still wondering how these things made it past any focus group, let alone the execs who signed off on the animation budget. Now, let's move on to the plot. Because while it technically follows the original, it's also not Snow White. For starters, she's not even named after her skin. Nope. In this version, Snow White was actually named after a blizzard. Because sure, why not? And remember the whole fairest one of all thing? Well, now, the magic mirror constantly reiterates that while the queen's beauty is famed, it's only skin deep, whereas Snow White is fairer because of her kind heart. And look, if I were Snow White and the mirror kept saying, "You're not actually prettier, but at least you're nice," I don't know if I'd really wear that badge with pride. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest changes. We kept hearing that Snow White wasn't going to be saved by a prince. That's because, well, the prince isn't even a prince. Snow White was raised to strive for a leadership position. She was going to be queen, of course,